Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. If you come here not in malice, then why don't you help out by hitting the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by Grey Woman 7. I was told I had to wear a bra, so I did. This happened last week. I was swimming laps at an indoor pool near my house. I'm a woman who had a double mastectomy without reconstruction. My chest is flat. I'm totally comfortable with how I look, but prefer for my scars to be covered in public. As far as swimming goes, women's suits have extra material to accommodate typical chests, so when I wear them, they're baggy. For backyard swimming, I just use a couple safety pins to keep it in place. For lap swimming, it balloons open like a parachute full of water and creates so much drag that it's difficult to swim. Tight competition swimsuits don't have enough coverage for the way the scars wrap around my sides under my arms. To get around this, I wear running shorts and a tight-fitting, full-coverage synthetic fabric dark-colored tank top. It works great. Last week, I was approached as I left the pool facility by a worker. He said that they had received a complaint that a woman in the pool was wearing a shirt, which is allowed, but no sports bra underneath. He then said their policy requires women who are not in swimsuits to have sports bras under their shirt. He told me that the policy started when they had a problem where a woman would come in to swim and only wear a thin white shirt and no bra in the pool during family swim hours. I explained politely that I've had a double mastectomy and do not need a bra. I said that swimsuits don't fit me and my top is very dark and not see-through, plus even if it was see-through, all anyone would see are scars. He said he understood and felt bad, but the management requires that the dress code be followed. I explained how I was much more covered up than anyone else in the pool and in fact was wearing exactly what he was minus the whistle. He was in shorts and a tank top. There were guys in there with just tight-fitting swim bottoms on and women in bikinis. I look Amish next to them. He again said he was sorry, but he couldn't make an exception to the rules. I asked for the rules in writing and he gave me a printout which did say what he was telling me. This brings us to yesterday. I dug out a sports bra out of a bin of old clothes and brought it with me. I wore the same shorts and top otherwise, and when I got in the water, I put the band of the bra around my head with the strap sticking up like bunny ears. People in the other lanes got a kick out of it once I explained what I was doing. I started warming up with my kickboard thinking the guy would come over and we would sort this nonsense out. Well, a lady in business clothes comes over and tells me I need to take the bra off my head. I would like to say here that this was an adult lap swim. There were no kids in the pool area. I explained it all to her and said I was following the rule to the letter. I was wearing a bra, which was all that was required. We went back and forth with her saying I knew it had to be worn normally. I said I couldn't wear it the way others do because I don't have anything to fill it and it would ride up to my chin while swimming without anything to hold it in place. She said I could use a skin-safe glue. Yeah, no, I'm not going to glue unnecessary garments to my body, and I told her as much. I finally said that unless she could state the rule I was breaking, that I would like to continue with my workout so I could get home to my kids and let the babysitter go home. She walked away. I swam for an hour with that bra perched on my head, lots of readjusting it once retrieving it from the bottom of the pool, then showered and went home. This morning I checked my email, which is linked to my membership at the aquatic center, to find a message from her. They will not be changing their policies, but I have been granted a special exception to the rule provided I continue to wear non-see-through tops. I wish they would have just gotten rid of the silly bra rule, but I'll take this, and if I ever see another woman struggling with their swimsuit over a flat chest, I'll let them know they can wear something more comfortable. Do you think that this situation is something that you should try to get a greater community outreach around? Whether it's like a social media like Nextdoor or Facebook or however you can get the message around to your community? Do you think it's worth letting people know about this bra rule and how it affects people like OP? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Our next story is by DuttoHead974. You're on a performance notice. No raise or bonus, no work from home, no overtime, and no learning new responsibilities. And then COVID happens. So I've posted a few stories about my wonderful old manager. Let's just call her Samantha. This story is about a coworker we'll call Joe. And from day one, it was obvious that Joe was one of the hardest working people on the team, and Samantha could not stand him. So this is a few years into Joe's tenure with the team, and for whatever reason or another, Samantha decides to put Joe on performance notice, which is basically an HR notice that you have 6 months to get your stuff together. or you're fired. The reason on the paperwork: improper attitude. Joe was the type of guy to always speak his mind, and while management says they like this, brutal experience shows this is a lie. The problem with notice is it also comes with penalties. No work from home, they literally take your laptop away and bring you a thin client, no approved overtime, and no learning new things or assignments. Oh, and no raise or bonus. You have to prove you do your job well, and then after 6 months, if you're not fired, the manager can extend with an additional probation period of another 6 months. January of every year is when we find out about our raises and bonuses from the previous year, and to put it delicately, that January, they screwed us. To the point that one person walked out and 2 older employees of 30+ years took packages. Come February, we are drowning and Joe can't work overtime and Joe can't learn new things. Manager's orders, remember? Well, this is the middle of Joe's probation period, as Samantha predictably extended his notice. So this is where we find ourselves mid-March 2020. Cue malicious compliance. During the lockdown, they send the whole company home. Everyone is working from home, except Joe. He is home, just not working. He technically can't. And about 2 weeks into the lockdown is when Samantha finally notices. She goes ballistic. "Why aren't you working? Blah blah blah," on a team email with everyone CC'd. He replies all saying, "As you know, I'm on coaching and cannot work from home." Tries to get HR to fire him, to which they reply, "Samantha, you elected to continue the notice, which still has 4 months. We can't issue him a laptop until it expires." Turns out the only way to rectify it ASAP was to petition formally with the head of HR that putting Joe on a performance notice was done in error and have all parties sign, including Joe. All this happens except Joe refuses to sign. He won't sign until they give him his bonus and raise, which they do. The whole thing took a month. A month that Joe basically had a free vacation. Well, most people would say that COVID messed them up one way or another, whether it's their job, their financial situation, their schooling. But for good old Joe here, glad to hear at least Joe was doing alright for a month. In fact, during the very first worst part of it, they got a raise and a bonus. Joe's doing the pandemic life right. This next story is by World Eater 43. I parked exactly where you told me to. I work at an EMS agency, and a decade ago, one of our bosses, who has an outright hostility towards my coworkers and just sits in his office all day, decided our out-of-shoot times and late responses were because we just don't go on calls, and not due to short staffing and lack of equipment to go in service with. Our post in the one town has a proper quarters with furniture, bathrooms, TV, microwave, fridge, etc. Well, apparently per the boss, we were late because we took our time and had to get dressed every call and go to the bathroom after the tone sounded, and his poor management was entirely our fault. This was nonsense, and we were basically always ready, but oftentimes responding from out of town due to covering multiple areas at once. So he proposed a new punishment post a mile down the street at a busy intersection where we were supposed to sit in either a car dealership's lot or a gas station. Well, we had very good relationships with these businesses and asked them to complain about our loitering, to which they did. Well, boss man didn't care and told us to figure it out. We aren't going back to sitting on our butts all day. We work 12-hour shifts, and access to quarters in between calls is not asking much, and that certainly wasn't why we missed response times. It was poor resource management on his part. Well, since we were posted at this intersection, 3 lanes going each direction, we decided we would just throw our lights on and sit in the middle of the intersection until our next call. That lasted about half an hour before a cop showed up who we knew very well and who in fact used to work with us. He thought it was hysterical and at our request called dispatch to ask what was happening, and we told them over the radio, to which the supervisor also thought it was completely appropriate given the directive and complaints. Well, after a 45-second long conversation with the boss man's direct manager, that post was abolished and our quarters were returned. That particular boss isn't involved in operational decisions anymore, and they don't really let him interact with the field crews. Dare I say this boss man was projecting? Maybe because the boss man literally sat around all day doing nothing himself, he assumed that must be what everybody else is doing too. You kinda just wonder how lazy people like this end up getting in those kinds of positions. Do they hustle till they make it to the top and then just coast along? Or is it a classic old nepotism hire where they were a friend of somebody or a relative of somebody and got very graciously placed in that position? The world may never know. I just feel bad for the daily commuters that have to deal with the confusion of an EMS vehicle sitting in the intersection with their sirens blaring, being like, do I go around them? Do I stay behind them? And last thing, if there's one job that deserves access to good furniture, bathrooms, TV, microwave, fridge, it's any kind of EMT or rescue services, especially those that work 12-hour shifts. Just a little bit of comfort between some very dramatic things is the least you can do. And our final story of the day is by D. Safet1. Okay, fine. Some years ago, before cell phones and the internet, I drove for a courier service attached to a well-known armored car company. However, all I ever carried were canceled checks, time cards, and other interoffice paperwork, so I did not get to carry a gun. I drove 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and averaged over 200 miles a day, making many stops. One of the stops was an under-construction nuclear power plant about 20 miles from nowhere. Even though it was still under construction and no uranium on site, the place was still ringed with 6-foot-tall chain-link fence topped with barbed wire and armed guards in little houses at every gate. My company's contract was that I picked up the union workers' time cards on Monday, and on Friday, I brought back the union workers' paychecks. For the first month or so, I had no problems getting into the site. After all, I was dressed in a uniform with armored car company logo patches and driving a car painted with the same logo. Then came that day. On that Monday, I had no problem picking up the time cards. However, come Friday, I pulled up to the main gate as usual. What I assume was a new guard came out of his shack and asked what I wanted. I told him I had a delivery for the site manager and could I pass? He said no. I told him I had the paychecks for the union workers and to ask him to call the site manager. He refused and told me to leave. Having a number of other stops, I threw the package of checks on the passenger side floor and did what he ordered. I planned to return the checks that night with the other paperwork I sent to the main office on our private plane. I finished my work and went home. About 10 p.m., I got a call from the big boss at our main office. He wanted to know why I hadn't delivered the checks, so I told him. He asked where the checks were. I had forgotten to pack them in the return bag, so I told him they were still on the floor of the car. He asked if I could make a trip out to the site at that time, and I said sure. If I got paid, I was paid by the hour, and it would be about an hour's drive out and back. I would have made the trip for free as I loved to drive, especially at night when the roads were empty and the company was paying for the gas, but what the heck? He said okay. So because I kept the company car at my home, I got in and headed for the plant. I was met there by the overall big main site manager, and he thanked me for the extra trip and said if I ever had another problem, I was to have the guard call him direct as he gave me his private number. Found out on Monday just how big the problem with the checks could have been from another boss I was talking to at the main office. All the workers on site were union plumbers, pipe fitters, welders, carpenters, etc., and made big bucks. They had it in their contract that if they did not get paid by midnight on Friday night, they got a double-hour bonus the next week, essentially an extra week's pay. I handed the checks to the manager just before 12, so technically, the workers got their pay on time. A lot of times I would imagine security guards might be pretty secure with their job if they were slightly overly restrictive on who they let through. Little did they know they almost made a huge mess up that probably would have gotten them fired. Shoot, maybe they still got fired for almost making that mistake. Imagine being stubborn and almost costing your company thousands of dollars because you wouldn't let one person through that had the delivery company plastered all over them. OP completely checked out as far as legitimacy goes, and the security guard just was like, no, get lost. I ain't talking to nobody, I ain't double checking this. I don't care if you're trying to deliver stuff. Get lost, I said no. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.